applicable. No matter what we think about it, we need to go through it. We need to read it. If we understand that the Torah was given to us, each part of the Torah was given to us as an expression of Yahweh, His holiness, His character, His heart, His life, and showing us what He desires for us, then there's something in there that we can read that's for us. If we call the book Leviticus, we're going to say, oh, it's just all about the Levites and the laws pertaining to the Levites and the things for the Levites, which, okay, so it is. This is all about the function of the Mishkan and the role of the priesthood and the Kohanim and the Leviim in it. But this was given to all Israel, though. This was explained to all Israel, especially the Leviim and the Kohanim, so that they would all know what happens next, how these things are to function, how these things are to work, how these things come into play, how it is that Yahweh says He's going to dwell in the midst of them in a tabernacle, and what are the daily functions within that. This was all Israel would know. And further, this wasn't like some secret code that the Leviim and the Kohanim had to observe that nobody else could know, possibly. No. This was for all Israel to know so that Israel would see what's going on and so that the priesthood would be held accountable to what they were supposed to be doing. All right, so this was something that all would come in together. All right, so if we start to examine this book as an expression of Yahweh and His heart to us, then it's going to reveal some more things to us. The Hebrew name of the book is VaYikra, and He called, which really opens things up. It really starts to explain some things. Who's doing the calling and who's He calling to, right? I mean, all these things are happening here if we go in and read Leviticus 1, but let's not lose sight of what's going on here. Leviticus, VaYikra, opens with a problem, just as Shmot, the book of Exodus, ends with a problem. The tabernacle was built so that Yahweh says that I may dwell among them. Literally, betocham, literally within them. Okay, so how is Yahweh giving us a tabernacle to show us how He dwells with us? If we were supposed to carry the tabernacle with them wherever they go, and then when they go into the land, Yahweh is there with them, but Yahweh will dwell among them, not just here in the tabernacle. I mean, He is infinite, right? He is omnipresent. He is everywhere. So He's showing us that He dwells within this tabernacle, meaning I can dwell within you, right? So here, the tabernacle is built, and Moshe erects the courtyard. They're done, and the kavod Yahweh comes, and He is there, but no one can enter now. Well, if no one can go in to enter and be in the presence of Yahweh, doesn't that defeat the point of having the Mishkan among them in the first place? So what's really going on here? In Shmot, we see Yahweh's delivering His people. He's redeeming them. He's bringing them to the mountain. He gives them His word. Now He says, build me a place that I may dwell among you or within you, and showing how that is done. Okay, the what. Now here as we go into VaYikra, we're going to see the how. Okay, this was done. This was established. Now what do we do with it? Okay, and that's what VaYikra is showing us. Its purpose, it's drawing near, and how all these things are done among us, even day to day, on a daily basis even, right? What's happening here? What's going on? What does it look like? What does it represent? What is our role? All of these things come into play, right? And so again, we cannot view VaYikra, I mean, even though it's the standalone book really for the Leviim, the Kohanim, it is, but we can't just view it like that because the whole book starts with the conjunction and. So, and He called. So Yahweh's calling out. He wants us to draw near to Him. So how do we do that? Again, this is all flowing together, right? You can't disassociate it from what came before, or we'll lose sight of the purpose in its midst. Now, the thing about VaYikra is it's showing us our connection to the presence of Yahweh and how we can draw near to Him and dwell with Him as a holy people. Because the emphasis of VaYikra is you are a holy people. The Lord your God, Yahweh, your Elohim, He is holy. Therefore, you are holy because he is your God. Now, in this, he doesn't tell us what we do to make ourselves more holy. All right. If you go in and you read, he says, you are holy. And he says, do not defile yourself. Do not do these things that bring defilement. Do not do these things that profane. Do not do these things that will cause that which is holy to become common. Okay. So he makes you holy. And then we have a responsibility to walk in that holiness that he has given us. You may have heard this as sanctification, right? We are to walk with him daily because he is holy. We walk as holy. We don't keep the Torah to try to be more holy. Wrong. We keep the Torah because that is showing us the heart of Yahweh. Because we are redeemed, because we are his people, because we are in covenant, we walk with him in his ways. His ways is revealed in the book. And constantly over and over again, we see the Lord your God, he is holy. And we see you are a holy people, right? And in VaYikra, in chapter 19, verse 2, it says, speak unto all the witness song of Bnei Israel and say to them, you are to be holy, for I, the Holy One, your God, am holy. 11:44, consecrate yourselves and be holy, for I am holy. 11:45, I am the Holy One who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. Therefore, be holy, for I am holy. 20:26, you are to be holy to me because I, the Holy One, am holy. I have set you apart from the nations to be my own. And again, we see there's other places as well, but this is all just in VaYikra. I mean, Peter says this as well, right? You are a holy people. A royal priesthood, a holy nation. You are holy. He also says to be holy in all your measure of conduct and everything that you do. Be holy because the Lord your God is holy. As a holy people, we walk with him. Now, how do we do that? How do we approach him? How do we come near to him? He brings us into his presence. He shows us how to approach. One of the things we see in this is even starting out this book, VaYikra. In the Torah scrolls, we see this is written very uniform across everything you'll see from scroll to scroll to scroll to scroll. And VaYikra, the very last letter of VaYikra is an Aleph, and you'll notice in the Torah scroll, it's small. Now, an Aleph, the Aleph itself represents strength. Okay? Strength, leadership, authority. So if it is strength that is made small, what would we call that? How about humility? How about meekness? Okay. How about in our weakness, he is strong. Okay. When we come and we approach him, we must be humble, right? Which comes to the question of this, which is more important, what we bring or how we bring it? You can talk about Jacob and Esau. You can talk about these things, how those were brought to their father. How did that go out, right? What about all the way in the beginning, Cain and Abel? Right? One offering was received, the other was not. And if you go back and you read, you'll notice it's not just about the offerings that they brought as much as it is the heart in which it was given. Now you could say, oh, but one was blood and one was not. But if you go back and you read it, you will never see in the text what type of offering they were bringing, or further, what type they were told they were supposed to bring. It says they were bringing an offering, and it states one was from the flock and one was from the land, right? So in that, we're not said, God said, bring me an Olah offering, as an example. You're not going to see that. It's not there. So all we see is that they were each bringing an offering, and it says they were bringing one from this. But it does not say that that's the reason that his offering was not accepted, right? If you go back and you read, it says that his offering was not accepted because of his heart. Because Yahweh spoke to him, and he says that his heart was not right. It says Cain and his offering he did not receive. It wasn't the offering, he didn't receive the offering because of Cain's heart. So again, was it what was brought, or was it the heart in which it was brought? See, that's a question, right? Does God accept offering from the fruit of the ground? Yes. We see even a mincha offering, right? That's a flour offering. Does God accept first fruits and the first fruits of the land, the fruits, the trees, the vegetables? Yeah, you're supposed to bring your first fruits to Yahweh. See, so again, it's just a matter of the heart. It's always been a matter of the heart from the very beginning of everything. Obedience is from the heart, not just doing because I have to. No, obedience is true obedience when it's from the heart to do so. Okay, so actually both are important is what we see here, because if your heart is right in doing it, then you will do it. So because it is our heart to do so, we do. So we need to approach Yahweh in the way that he said, but we need to have the right heart in doing so. This is why we see things like in Matthew 5:23, where it says, so therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has aught against you, leave the gift before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother, then come offer your gift. So again, it's an issue of your heart being right before Yahweh, then you came and you brought your gift, right? Hosea 14 says this, Israel, return unto Yahweh your God, for you have fallen by your iniquity. Take with you words and turn to Yahweh. Say to him, take away all iniquity and receive us graciously. So will we render, look at this, the calves of our lips. This reads in the Hebrew, parim sfatinu. Parim sfatinu. So in Hebrews 13:15 being quoted, it says, by him therefore let us offer the sacrifice of praise to God continually. That is the fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name. Is this a misquote? No, because the word there for fruit, par and pre, they have the same root. So what we can say here is we will render the calves of our lips, the offering of our lips, the fruit of our lips, but putting it in the terminology of calves puts it in the offering aspect. Everything that we offer, we are offering our words. Well, Yeshua says, out of the mouth, the heart speaks. So the things that we say, they're in us. So the things that come forth from us should be an offering to Yahweh, should be the things that are holy, should be the things that we are giving to him and putting these things on the altar, as well as our very hearts and everything that we have, which leads us to the idea of sacrifice. You know, the things that we're giving, we often say the sacrifice. And if we put it this way, it kind of gives us the idea that, God is not happy unless you're miserable. You have to give up something that you don't want to give up and sacrifice so that God is happy. That's not it. Not at all. Okay. In Hebrew, this word we use here is korban. Korban from the word karav, which means literally something brought near. It's not a matter of God wants you miserable so he's happy and you have to do without so that he has. That's not it. It's a matter of what I am bringing near to the Father is representing me, who I am. The investment of my life and identity is being brought to Yahweh. So in that aspect, am I going to bring something to Yahweh that I don't value? Because if I don't value it, is it really an offering for him? No, we're throwing it away. If we don't value something, we're just going to pitch it. But if we value it and we are giving it, see, that is an offering. And so here what we have, the korban is something that is brought near to Yahweh. And so that is a coming near, a drawing close. And even in the type of offerings that were given, if you read the opening few chapters of Leviticus, each one is talks of a different offering that's given there. 5 main ones, then you can break it down into subcategories from that. But in that, 3 don't have anything to do with sin at all. The sin offerings are 2 offerings. It's the sin offering, the guilt offering, the trespass offering. Okay, so these offerings deal with sin and the things concerning sin. The other ones have nothing to do with sin. Okay, like fellowship, like a burnt offering, something completely given to the Father. An offering of thanks. I mean, this has nothing to do with sin. So again, these are things that were brought near to the Father because we had the heart to do so. And if we approach this as a means of korban and understand that when you brought it, you had a role to play in that which was brought. You had something to do. You had an investment of identity in who you were in that which you brought. All right. So in the korban, you decided to bring it. You decided what kind of offering you would bring. You selected it. You brought it to the courtyards. You laid your hands on it, and in many cases, you slaughtered it. This was all overseen by the priest, who would then take the blood and apply it to the altar. And then the animal and the blood went up in smoke into the presence of Yahweh. But understand, many of these things that happened, you were involved in the process. Now, there were some things you couldn't do, right? You could not take the blood and take it to the altar. You could not put the animal on the altar. I mean, there were things that you could not do, but there were things that you were supposed to be involved in. One of these things is the laying on of hands. The smicha, the laying on of hands. There's an investment of identity that's giving there, putting your weight on something else and making a profession, proclaiming something over that when you are laying your hands on it. There's a biblical principle here of laying hands on not just the animals, but on people as well. When the Levi'im were put into service, it says all Israel came together and laid their hands on the Levites, right? Making an investment of themselves into the identity of theirs into the Levi'im so that they could minister on their behalf. All right, so there is a thing here in laying on of hands, but a couple of things I feel need to be mentioned here really quick, though. One, there's a transfer of something that's happening here when this is done. Do not do this quickly, and do this only by discernment through the Ruach HaKodesh. All right, be careful who you let lay hands on you and pray for you, and be careful who you do it to, as well. 1 Timothy 5:22 says, lay hands suddenly on no man, neither be a partaker of other men's sins. Keep yourself pure. One of these things, laying on of hands, can also be seen as an ordination, like I said, in the instance of the Levi'im laying hands there for Israel. So in that, there's an investment that's given there. Now they go off and they do something that's totally in left field, that's absolutely not correct, and they're doing it on your authority because you commissioned them to do so. See? So again, the matter of laying hands, it says lay hands suddenly on no one. But there is a spiritual principle we see of laying on of hands being done. Examples, in Hebrews 6, 1 and 2, we talked about the initial lessons of maturity that's given there. 1 Timothy 4:14, we're talking about from the elders to Timothy. In Acts 9:12, Ananias to Shaul. In Acts 8:18 and 19, we see the apostles to the people. In Numbers 8, 9 through 11, we see Israel to the priests. Numbers 27, 16 to 20, Moshe to Yahashua. All of these things is an issue of laying on of hands that's being done there. And there's an investment of identity and that being associated with that which is brought, which leads us to the next point here. The korban that is brought, let's look at the korban yachid. This is an offering that is brought by an individual. Now, something that's interesting that happens here. When there were offerings that were brought by the people, understand this was done as an individual. You as a person had an offering that you brought. But this is an investment being identified with the people of Israel. So you came to worship as an individual, but as you approached, your offering would be put on the altar, along with the tamid that was done every morning and every evening. And again, making the connection to your offering, to the offering with all Israel being there as well. See, so when you came to worship, you did so not just as yourself, even though you approached as one, you approached as yourself, but you were identified with the people, with the collective that was there being represented before Yahweh. Isn't that awesome? But you brought as an individual. So this is korban yachid. Korban Yachid. You bring yourself to the altar in Leviticus 1, and then Romans 12 tells us the same thing. We live as an offering to Yahweh. We live as a sacrifice. Let's take a quick look at it. Leviticus 1, verse 2. So speak to the people, to the children of Israel, and say to them, if any man of you bring an offering unto Yahweh, you shall bring your offering of the cattle, even of the herd, and of the flock. So this is the first mention of any instruction regarding these offerings is, if any man of you bring an offering unto Yahweh. So is the subject the man or the offering? Is the subject the person or the offering? Okay, let's look at this a little more. So in the Hebrew, it reads, if any man of you bring. Now, if this is to be written in the Hebrew as it is written in this translation, it would read, Adam mechem ki yakriv. But the way it is actually written in the Torah is Adam ki yakriv mechem, which would translate as any man of you when he offers an offering of you. In other words, what we're really saying is the essence of the sacrifice is that we offer ourselves. When we bring the offering, we're bringing ourselves. The offering is a representation. What God really wants is you. Okay, so this offering that was brought is part of what we would call the sacrificial system. And was the sacrificial system to deal with sin? No. It was a means of drawing near. Like we had stated, earlier, not all the offerings had anything to do with sin at all. Okay, so this is kind of a point that's not really stated in the scriptures. All right, this was not a means of doing this to deal with sin, because the offerings did not take away sin. For example, if you brought a sin offering, unless you repented, and in some cases made restitution, you had to bring your offering. If you were to bring a sin offering and you went to the Levite and you said, I'm bringing this type of an offering, he would ask why, so that he knew what to do with it. What are you doing? What is this offering for? What are you doing here? Right? So a person had to make confession. They had to repent to bring the offering. And in some cases, they had to go make it right with the person, whatever the sin may be, if there was another person involved. Right? Make restitution and then come back and bring their offering, which leads us back to what Yeshua said again, right? So again, this is not an issue of dealing with sin per se. This is a matter of coming near to the presence of Yahweh, a means of drawing near to a holy Elohim while we are in a world that is still unclean. Okay, there isn't a need for atonement that we see that are given here, like Yom HaKippurim. Atonement has to be done because sin is unclean, but not all unclean is sin. So there has to be a means of being cleaned and cleansed and being brought near to Yahweh. And again, all the other offerings that were given were for purposes like worship, thanksgiving, or you just wanted to bring an offering and to do these kind of things, right? So the Korban was a representation of our state when we brought it. And again, like we said in Matthew 5:23 and 24, where Yeshua was saying, so if you bring in an offering and you and your brother have aught, fix that, then come back and make your offering. He was saying, make the heart right, then come bring your offering that is given here. Now we go to Romans 12. Romans 12 says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercy of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Some translations say reasonable service. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So the spiritual worship, reasonable service, Greek reads rational worship or service. Okay, the related Hebrew equivalent of that word is avodah, and eved is the word for servant. So again, we do this because we are servants of the Most High. We do this because we worship Him, because we honor Him. We come into His presence. We do it His way. All right. VaYikra shows us proper worship towards Yahweh, who is holy, from a people that He sets apart as holy. In other words, a heart towards Yahweh is the foremost thing in approaching Him. The heart must be right before the thought of bringing an offering is even given. We see in Micah 6, verses 6 through 8, says, with what shall I come before Adonai? With what shall I bow myself before God on high? Shall I present Him with burnt offerings, with year-old calves? Will Adonai be pleased with thousands of rams and hordes of rivers of oil? Shall I offer Him my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my belly for the sin of my soul? He has told you, humanity, or oh man, what is good, what Adonai is seeking from you. Practice justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. He's not saying, oh, the offerings are irrelevant. What he's saying is, unless you're doing this, you're not bringing them in the right heart. They won't be received. They won't be given. No matter how many you give, if your heart's not in it, if your heart's not right, it's not counted as such. Like Abraham, he walked with Yahweh. He was a friend of God. Why? Because he believed Him. He walked with Him. And then because of that, he could draw near. All right. So again, the korbanot were not brought to take away sin. They were not brought to clear your conscience. They could not. They related to matters of the flesh, not spirit. It's a spiritual state. This is why Yeshua came, to make the spirit able to be in communion with the Father so that you would know the truth and walk in it. It's not just the truth will set you free. You must know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Because this offering, you had to be in a state of ritual purity to come into the presence of Yahweh to worship him. But you could still have that thing in your mind that still kind of plays over and over and over. And like, yeah, is this really where I'm at? Did God really receive me? Did these things really happen? I mean, I can do this, and he can say, you know, okay, I've been cleansed, but I don't feel any different. What's going on? Right? All that, you know, the things we play over in our minds. But Yeshua came so it's not just a matter of being ritually clean on the outside, but he could get to the very depths of you and to who you really are, to cleanse you inside and out. And only he could do that. See, Hebrews 9:9 says this. Speaking of the Mishkan and its service, this symbolizes the present age and indicates that the conscience of the person performing the service cannot be brought to the goal by the gifts and sacrifices he offers, for they involve only food and drink and various ceremonial washings, regulations concerning the outward life, imposed until the time for God to reshape the whole structure. When the Messiah appeared as Kohen Gadol of the good things that are happening already, notice that good things that are already happening, okay, these things are good and these things are happening. Then through the greater and more perfect tent, which is not man-made, that is, not of this created world, through this tent that is not man-made, not of this world, right? What happens? Verse 12. He entered the holiest place once and for all, and he entered not by the means of blood and goats and calves, but by means of his own blood, his own life, setting people free forever. Look at verse 13. For if sprinkling ceremonially unclean persons with the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of the heifer restores their outward purity, stop there for a minute and consider this. He is stating the fact, because he says, for if. The sprinkling, like the ashes of the red heifer was given for a state of ritual purity, to make someone into a state of clean, to be able to be declared clean who had been unclean. So it says, for if these things can restore an outward purity, he is saying that it did. Okay? If this is true, then what comes next must be even more so. That's what's going on here, because if we take this in the opposite term, if he says that these things are irrelevant and they don't matter, then to use this analogy that he's saying, how much more does what come next not matter? And that's not what's being said. Okay, what he's saying, for if, verse 13, the sprinkling of ceremonially unclean persons with the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of the heifer restores their outward purity, verse 14, then how much more the blood of Messiah, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself to God as a sacrifice without blemish, will purify our conscience from works that lead to death, so that we can serve the living God. There's no condemnation there. And sometimes we'll come to Yahweh, he'll forgive you, but we beat ourselves up. And Yahweh is saying there's no place for that. Stop. Okay? He can cleanse you and cleanse your conscience, make you clean inside and out. And so that you can stand firm, stand strong, and be equipped to serve the living God, knowing you carry his presence with you wherever you go. That is the idea of coming into his presence, of worshiping him, of being there with him and walking with him. Wow. That's the picture of the tabernacle. Because if you're supposed to be a tabernacle, if you're supposed to be a temple for him to dwell, that's the picture, guys. That's what we're looking at. So that's all we really got for you today, guys, going into this. So I pray that this has been a blessing to you. I hope this has been encouraging to you. I hope it challenges you as well. Thanks for sticking around and listening in for the whole teaching. Like to hear your comments too. If you got comments and feedback, all that, please let us know. Let us know what you're thinking. And if this is a blessing to you, please consider making a donation to help us continue in making these videos and putting them out and doing things to keep the words going out there. We appreciate you listening and watching, and on whatever platform that you have, and continue to do so and share. share them as however you watch, however you see these things. Get out there and share them so that we can keep the word moving out there. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I pray this has been a blessing to you, and I hope you be a blessing to those around you. All right, so until next time, be blessed and shalom.